It started quietly, almost as if the galaxy itself had held its breath. At the very edge of Imperial space, where star systems are usually quiet and empty, a ship appeared without warning. No sensors had detected it until it was already there. No message, no warning, nothing. Just a human warship, alone, hovering in the void. It was a vessel, unlike any other. The hull was sleek, functional, and radiated an energy that made even experienced officers uneasy. It was clearly human-made, yet it carried a presence that demanded attention. The first people to notice it were the outer border scouts of the Galactic Empire. These were not the kind of officers who were easily surprised. They had seen strange planets, rogue asteroids, even ships from neighboring systems carrying exotic technology. But this was different. The sensors picked up a single warship, alone, traveling at a speed that suggested it had been monitoring Imperial territory for a while. No other ships accompanied it, no fleet, no drones. It was just one human warship, silently crossing the edge of known space and appearing exactly where it shouldn't have been the moment the detection was confirmed. The usual calm of the Imperial officers vanished. Orders were given in an instant. Communications buzzed with a nervous energy that hadn't been felt in decades. Every station along the border activated protocols, tracking the ship's trajectory, analyzing its energy signature, comparing it to all known human designs. Nothing matched perfectly. Every detail suggested it was human, yes, but the scale and capability were far beyond what the Empire expected. It was a ship designed not for exploration or diplomacy, but for war. And yet, somehow, there was no sign of aggression. Rumors began to spread immediately. Officers whispered to one another in the hallways of massive Imperial command centers. Why would humanity send a warship here, alone? One asked, voice tight with tension. Another answered, equally concerned, it must be a threat. Why else would it be here? Nobody knew for sure. And that uncertainty only made the fear grow. Across the Empire, fleets were being prepared. Ships were being armed, and everyone was watching the human vessel with equal parts curiosity and dread. The council convened, summoning generals, admirals, and scientists alike. The high-ranking officers, who were usually calm and measured, were pacing their chambers, speaking in clipped tones. Every possibility was debated. Was it a warning? Was it a trap? Or was it some kind of reconnaissance, a test of Imperial defenses? Each theory seemed more alarming than the last, and the fact that there was no immediate communication from the humans only heightened the panic. In all of recorded history, humans had rarely ventured so far, and when they did, they were always cautious, always careful. This one, however, seemed bold, almost reckless. Meanwhile, on the human warship, the crew remained calm. There was no fanfare, no dramatic gestures, no panic. They moved with purpose, every action measured and precise. Sensors scanned the surrounding space, recording every Imperial signal and every energy fluctuation. Communications were monitored, but no message had yet been sent. There was a reason for this. The humans were not here to provoke, nor were they here to fight, at least not yet. They had detected something that required immediate attention, and the Empire, with all its fleets and vast resources, had not noticed. This was their chance to act first, quietly and efficiently. Back in the Empire, the panic only grew. Orders were issued for ships to move closer, but they were told to maintain a cautious distance. Nobody wanted to provoke the humans into doing something rash. And yet, even from a distance, the presence of the human warship was unnerving. The energy readings, the movement patterns, even the silence of the ship, it all sent a message the Empire couldn't ignore. This was not a small patrol vessel. This was a statement. Humanity was here, and somehow they were already in control of the situation. Across the galaxy, people began to take notice. Traders, miners, and even colonists in remote systems heard about the ship. Speculation ran wild. Some believed it was a prelude to war. Others hoped it was a diplomatic mission, an attempt to communicate and avoid conflict. Yet the fear lingered because no one truly knew. The humans had always been unpredictable, capable of both great diplomacy and devastating warfare. And this one ship, appearing out of nowhere, reminded the galaxy of that dot inside the Imperial command centers. The tension was almost unbearable. Officers worked around the clock, analyzing every signal, running simulations, trying to predict the humans' next move. Meetings lasted hours, often without conclusion. Every hypothesis seemed equally dangerous. Some suggested sending an ambassador, a risky move that could backfire. Others argued for an immediate strike, hoping to disable the ship before it caused any trouble. The debate was heated, the kind that rarely ended without someone losing their temper. And yet, in the background, the human warship continued to drift through the void. Unaware, or perhaps indifferent to the chaos it had caused, the Empire had faced threats before, but nothing quite like this. Alien fleets, rogue factions, even internal rebellions. They were all challenges the Empire could manage, sometimes even easily. But humanity was different. The humans' reputation for innovation, adaptability, and sheer unpredictability was well known. Every officer knew the stories. Planets defended with minimal resources, entire fleets outmaneuvered by human ingenuity, and sometimes entire campaigns changed by a single human decision. And now, here they were, unannounced, on the very edge of Imperial space, and everyone wondered, what did they want? As hours turned into a day, the human warship did not move aggressively, did not fire, did not communicate in a threatening way. It simply remained where it had appeared, monitoring, observing, and waiting. The Empire's panic only deepened. Their sensors could not detect the ship's true capabilities, and every officer knew that underestimating humans had led to disaster before. Even without firing a single shot, this one ship had caused more fear than many fleets combined. Finally, a decision was made to send a small reconnaissance team, an elite group tasked with observing the humans up close. They approached carefully, keeping engines on low to avoid detection. Yet even as they moved closer, they were struck by something unusual. The humans were calm, organized, and fully aware of every Imperial move. There was no sign of panic, no rush to flee, no attempts to communicate, only presence. And that presence alone was powerful enough to shake the confidence of every Imperial officer involved. In that moment, it became clear to the Empire. Humanity had arrived, but not to fight. This ship, one lone vessel, had already demonstrated a kind of power that the Empire could not easily measure. Fear, respect, and confusion mingled in the hearts of those watching from command centers. They had no idea why humans had come, but one thing was certain. Whatever it was not ordinary. The galaxy had changed in that quiet moment, at the edge of Imperial space. Because humanity had shown up, and as the human crew continued their silent vigil, the officers in the Empire began to realize something they had long known but rarely faced. So directly, underestimating humans was not an option. Not now, not ever. Whatever mission had brought this warship here, it had already succeeded in one thing. It had made the entire galactic empire pause, rethink, and fear what might come next. The moment the news of the human warship's arrival reached the main command centers of the galactic empire, panic spread like wildfire. For decades, the outer borders had been quiet. Humans had been known as unpredictable, yes, but they rarely ventured this far, and when they did, it was usually as part of a fleet, as a message, or in carefully measured steps. This time, none of that applied. One lone warship was moving silently, boldly, and the Empire had no idea why, Orders were sent out immediately. Every fleet within 100 light-years of the sighting was instructed to move to interception points, while keeping a safe distance. Scouts and reconnaissance drones were dispatched in multiple directions, each tasked with monitoring the human vessel without provoking it. At the same time, alarms rang through Imperial stations, shaking officers from their routines. Emergency protocols were activated, battle stations manned, and every available admiral was summoned for urgent briefings. The mood was tense. Nobody spoke of courage or confidence. The only word that circulated freely was worry. Inside the Empire, rumors ran rampant. Some believed the human warship was a warning, a demonstration of power. Others feared it was a precursor to an attack, a single spark that could ignite a war they were unprepared for. Imperial officers debated fiercely in their command chambers. Should they communicate first? Should they strike immediately? Or should they simply watch, hoping the humans would leave without incident? Every option seemed dangerous, every choice uncertain. The smaller fleets that were sent to observe the human warship had strict orders. Do not engage unless provoked. And yet, as they approached, the presence of the human vessel had an effect that nobody expected. Even from a distance, the human warship projected confidence. Its energy readings were stable and calculated, its movements precise but unthreatening. Despite being vastly outnumbered, the humans did not seem worried, did not change course, and did not hide. That quiet confidence unnerved the Empire's observers more than any potential attack could have. The reconnaissance officers began to realize that this was not an ordinary situation. Humans were known for boldness and ingenuity, often finding ways to achieve the impossible. Yet this behavior went beyond typical human unpredictability. The warship was not seeking confrontation. It was asserting a presence, sending a signal without words. Every sensor reading, every pattern of movement, suggested that the humans had knowledge, capability, or intent that the Empire could not yet comprehend. Back at the Imperial High Council, tensions escalated. Generals argued with scientists, and admirals debated strategies with diplomats. There was no easy answer. A direct attack could provoke humans into something catastrophic, and ignoring the warship could be seen as weakness. Some council members argued that the humans might have detected something in the sectors ahead, a danger the Empire had overlooked. Others insisted that it was a test, a way for humanity to gauge Imperial readiness. Nobody could be certain. The uncertainty itself was unnerving, creating a sense of vulnerability that the Empire was unaccustomed to feeling. Meanwhile, news of the human warship's presence spread beyond military circles. Traders in remote systems, miners on distant colonies, and even scientists in research stations far from the border heard the reports. Some saw it as a sign of impending war, others as an opportunity for trade or diplomacy. But fear lingered everywhere. Humans were respected for their intelligence, their ability to innovate in impossible situations, and their unpredictability. And this one warship reminded everyone that humans could act with purpose without needing a fleet or a command structure to guide them. One ship was enough. Within the Empire's reconnaissance teams, officers were being tested like never before. They watched the humans carefully, analyzing the energy signature, the course, the speed, and even the direction of approach. No conventional tactics seemed to apply. Every calculation suggested that the humans were capable of actions far beyond the Empire's expectations. Some officers began to wonder if a fleet attack could even succeed. Others worried that even minor mistakes could provoke the humans into acting defensively or offensively before the Empire was ready. The sense of danger grew with each passing hour, even as the humans maintained their calm, deliberate course. Back on the human warship, the crew continued their quiet operations. They were aware of the Empire's response, monitoring the movement of every ship, every signal, every energy fluctuation. But they had a mission far larger than confrontation. Their presence was not to threaten, but to investigate. They had detected something in this sector that could not be ignored, something that neither humans nor the Empire had encountered before. Every move was calculated, precise, designed to ensure that they were prepared for the unexpected without provoking unnecessary conflict. The warship itself was a statement. Humans were capable, ready, and willing to act when necessary. The Empire, however, had never been comfortable with uncertainty. Panic only increased as time passed. More fleets were activated, more scouts sent out, more sensors trained on the human vessel. Reports were sent continuously to command centers, each one more detailed than the last, each one highlighting the humans' unshakable composure. Officers who had seen countless battles, rebellions, and skirmishes admitted quietly that they had never faced anything like this. One ship alone had created more unease than entire campaigns had in the past. As the hours stretched into a full cycle, the Empire's High Council realized that communication might be unavoidable. Every plan to ignore the warship had failed. Waiting any longer increased the risk that the humans might detect something first, act independently, and leave the Empire unprepared. The Council debated sending a direct envoy, a move that carried its own dangers. The humans could respond with diplomacy, yes, but they could also act in ways the Empire could not predict. Sending representatives was a gamble, but doing nothing was equally dangerous. At the same time, smaller Imperial officers began to notice something unexpected. The human warship, despite being alone, was not moving randomly. Its course suggested careful planning, a strategy that considered not only their own mission, but the movements of Imperial forces. Every adjustment in position, every slight change in trajectory was deliberate. This was not recklessness or arrogance. It was control, precision, and awareness that no single Imperial ship had been able to match before. The humans were demonstrating capability without aggression, confidence without threat, and intelligence without arrogance. It was a combination that unnerved observers more than any attack could have. Across the Empire, panic and awe mingled in equal measure. Fleet commanders spoke in hushed tones about the humans' audacity. Scientists marveled at the technology on display, even at a distance. Diplomats worried about the implications. And everywhere, the same question repeated itself. Why was humanity here, now, alone? It was a question with no easy answer, and that alone was terrifying. By the time the first reconnaissance team had drawn close enough to observe in detail, it became clear that the humans were not here to fight. There were no defensive maneuvers, no weapons activated, no attempt to communicate aggression. And yet, the warship's mere presence had already shifted the balance. The Empire was forced to acknowledge that a single human vessel, guided by purpose and intelligence, could create a level of tension that entire fleets had failed to achieve. As the day ended, the Empire faced a sobering truth. The humans had arrived, and they had done so on their own terms. Their warship was not just a ship. It was a signal, a statement, and a challenge. One that the Empire had to understand before it could respond. And for the first time in decades, officers and leaders alike felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on them. They had faced threats before, yes, but nothing like this. Humanity's presence was a reminder that power was not measured in numbers alone, that a single warship could unsettle an entire empire, and that boldness, intelligence, and calm could be more threatening than fleets of weapons. By the end of the cycle, the Empire knew one thing for certain. They could not afford to underestimate humanity. Not this time. Not ever. The human warship had changed everything, not with fire or destruction, but with presence, precision, and purpose. And as Imperial officers returned to their stations, still tense, still uncertain, one thought lingered in everyone's mind. Whatever the humans were doing, it was only the beginning. The Imperial reconnaissance team approached cautiously, their sensors trained on the human warship. Every officer aboard felt a mix of curiosity and tension. They had expected hostility. They had prepared for the humans to make the first move, perhaps even attack without warning. But as they drew closer, they realized that nothing about this ship matched their expectations. There were no weapons firing, no defensive shields flaring, no aggressive maneuvers. The humans were calm, almost casual in the face of a fleet that could have overwhelmed them. It was unsettling. Officers whispered to each other in hushed tones, sharing observations that seemed impossible. The human warship appeared ordinary at first glance, yet every detail suggested careful engineering, careful planning, and careful purpose. The energy readings were precise, controlled, unlike any other human vessel the Empire had encountered. Its movement was deliberate, methodical, almost as if it was aware of every ship, every sensor, and every system trying to monitor it. The human crew was operating at a level that made the Imperial team question their own capabilities. The closer they came, the more they noticed the details that were almost invisible at first. There were subtle changes in the ship's orientation, tiny adjustments to energy output, and minimal fluctuations in speed that suggested incredible precision. These were not random patterns or instinctive human decisions. Every move was calculated, every action measured. The Imperial officers realized that they were witnessing something rare. Humans operating with complete control and total confidence, yet without aggression. That realization alone made many officers uneasy. The human warship, from its position, seemed to observe the approaching fleet, almost as if it were aware of their intentions before they acted. For the first time, the Imperial reconnaissance team felt a strange mix of fear and respect. This was not a confrontation, but a display of capability that was impossible to ignore. The humans had achieved something that decades of Imperial planning and strategy had not. They commanded attention without making a single aggressive move. Every officer knew that underestimating these humans could lead to disaster. Inside the human warship, the crew remained calm, their focus absolute. They had been monitoring the Empire's responses for hours, analyzing signals, tracking energy patterns, and anticipating the moves of every ship. There was no panic, no excitement, no hesitation. They were prepared, focused, and patient. They knew that the Empire would observe them closely, and they also knew that appearances mattered. By staying calm, they projected confidence, but also sent a subtle message. Humans were aware, capable, and in control. The reconnaissance team finally adjusted their sensors to analyze the human ship more closely. To their surprise, they found no unusual weaponry deployed, no unusual energy surges, no hidden defenses. The ship was almost empty of anything that could be interpreted as an immediate threat. It was, in every sense, a warship built for action, yet it exuded a sense of peace. The Imperial officers exchanged worried glances. If this ship could appear unarmed, calm, and deliberate, what could it do if provoked? The thought alone was enough to send waves of anxiety through the fleet. The Imperial officers began debating the situation quietly among themselves. Some argued that this was a test of patience, a way for the humans to observe without committing to action. Others suggested that the humans might already know something the Empire did not, some hidden danger in the sector, some anomaly or threat that required caution. Every theory seemed plausible, and every theory was more frightening than the last. The sense of uncertainty was almost paralyzing. Officers who were used to taking decisive action now hesitated, unsure of what the humans intended. Meanwhile, back on the human warship, the crew monitored the approaching Imperial ships closely. They understood the tension they had created and used it to their advantage. By not acting aggressively, they forced the Empire to reveal its own state of preparedness and response strategies. Every move of the Imperial fleet was noted, every calculation recorded. The humans were not here to provoke, but they were also not here to be underestimated. They had come for a purpose, and they were prepared to act if necessary. As the day progressed, the Imperial fleet noticed something even more unsettling. The human warships seemed to anticipate their moves. When the Imperial ships adjusted position, the humans made subtle changes that maintained their distance without retreating. When sensors attempted to scan the human ship in detail, it adjusted its energy output in response, making analysis difficult. It was as if the ship was alive, aware, and capable of responding instantly to every action. The officers could not determine whether this was advanced technology, human intuition, or both. The result was the same. The Empire felt outmatched, even without a single shot being fired. Tension in the Empire's command centers grew as the reconnaissance team reported these findings. High-ranking officials gathered to discuss the implications. Generals and admirals debated the meaning of the humans' calm approach. The scientists analyzed energy readings, and diplomats considered possible intentions. The consensus was troubling. Humanity's actions suggested capability, intelligence, and foresight that surpassed Imperial assumptions. The question on everyone's mind was no longer what is the human warship doing here, but what do the humans know that we do not? The situation became even more complex when the Imperial officers realized that the humans were not just reacting to the fleet, but seemed to have their own plan entirely. The warship's movements were independent, coordinated, and purposeful. It was clear that the humans were not intimidated, not distracted, and not constrained by Imperial presence. Instead, they moved as if the Empire's fleet was an expected element, a factor to be noted, but not feared. The realization sent a ripple of unease through the entire command structure. Humans were confident in their mission, confident in themselves, and confident in their ability to act. Even when surrounded by a potential enemy, the observation continued, and the Imperial officers found themselves unable to ignore the implications. This was no ordinary warship. It was a statement, a demonstration of power without aggression. The humans had not fired a single weapon, yet they had captured the full attention of the Empire. Every fleet, every command center, and every officer knew that underestimating humanity was dangerous. They were witnessing a new kind of strategy, one based on control, patience, and precision, rather than brute force. And it was terrifying because it challenged every expectation the Empire had about human behavior. Inside the human warship, the crew prepared for potential scenarios. They knew the Empire would watch, would analyze, and might even test them. Yet they also knew that their mission required focus and patience. They monitored the sector for anomalies, potential threats, and irregularities, all while maintaining composure. There was no unnecessary communication, no flamboyant display, no attempt to intimidate. Everything they did was calculated, measured, and intentional. The human warship was a tool, a weapon, and a statement, all at the same time. The Imperial officers could not help but notice the psychological effect of the human warship. Even those who were experienced in dealing with hostile species felt a sense of unease. The humans were not threatening, yet they commanded attention. They were not aggressive, yet they caused fear. Every observation, every calculation, every move reinforced one idea. This single human ship was capable of far more than anyone had anticipated. It was a reminder that power was not always measured in numbers, in fleets, or in weapons. Sometimes, presence alone could be more unsettling than the largest armada. By the time the observation period ended, the Imperial fleet had gathered enough data to understand one truth. The humans were in control. They had not acted aggressively, but they had dictated the terms of engagement simply by being present. The Empire could no longer assume superiority. A single human warship had changed the perception of power, strategy, and threat across an entire sector. Officers who had once been confident were now cautious. Planners who had relied on conventional tactics were reconsidering their approaches. And the sense of unease permeated every command center. For the first time, the Empire realized that the humans' intentions were not easily guessed. Their calm, deliberate, and precise behavior was unnerving because it suggested knowledge and preparedness that the Empire lacked. The officers knew that humans were unpredictable, yes, but this was something beyond unpredictability. It was mastery, awareness, and strategic thinking that challenged the very way the Empire measured strength. And as the day ended, all officers agreed on one fact. Humanity was not here to be underestimated, and whatever mission had brought this warship into Imperial space was only beginning. The tension across Imperial command centers reached its peak. Hours had passed since the human warship had appeared at the edge of their territory. Imperial officers had watched every movement, analyzed every signal, and yet they still could not understand the humans' true intent. Every fleet, every reconnaissance drone, and every sensor seemed to confirm the same unsettling fact. The humans were calm, precise, and completely independent of Imperial control. And the longer the silence lasted, the more it worried the Empire. Then, unexpectedly, the human warship transmitted a message. It was not aggressive, not demanding, not threatening. It was simple and direct. A request to communicate with the highest authority of the Empire. The message itself was concise, almost understated, but it carried enormous weight. For a moment, the Empire froze. Every officer, general, and diplomat knew that this was unprecedented. Humanity had appeared at the edge of Imperial space alone, and now it was asking to speak directly to those in command. No one could ignore it, and no one dared underestimate it. The High Council convened immediately. Generals, admirals, scientists, and diplomats crowded the council chambers, discussing the implications of the message. Every possible scenario was debated, from the optimistic to the catastrophic. Some argued that this was an opportunity for diplomacy, a chance to prevent potential conflict before it even started. Others warned that it could be a trap, that the humans might be luring the Empire into a vulnerable position. Fear and curiosity battled in the minds of all present. But one thing was clear. Ignoring this message was no longer an option. Preparations for communication were meticulous. The Empire sent out a secure channel, encrypted to the highest standards, and arranged for a direct link to the High Council. Officers monitored every frequency, every transmission, every potential interference. And all the while, the human warship remained where it had been, waiting. Its presence was calm, deliberate, and unyielding. There was no rush, no sign of impatience, no hint of aggression. The humans were demonstrating that they were not here to provoke. Yet the power of their presence alone demanded attention. When the communication link was established, the human commander's voice was clear, calm, and steady. There was no hint of hostility, no arrogance, no attempt to manipulate. It was professional, precise, and focused. The message was simple. The humans had detected an anomaly spreading across multiple star systems, something that posed a potential threat far beyond ordinary conflict. The warship had been sent to investigate, and the humans had arrived first. They were here to act, not to fight, and their objective was to gather information and assess the situation before it became uncontrollable. The reaction in the High Council was immediate. Officers and diplomats leaned forward, listening intently, realizing that humanity was speaking not as a threat, but as a responsible actor. Yet the implications were staggering. The Empire had vast resources, fleets that could overwhelm most threats, and intelligence networks that spanned entire sectors. And still, humans had acted first. The message carried not only information, but a subtle reminder. The Empire had not noticed this danger, but humans had. And their presence was both a warning and an invitation to cooperate. The council debated for hours. Scientists analyzed the data humans had provided, trying to confirm the existence and nature of the anomaly. Admirals discussed fleet movements and readiness. Diplomats considered the implications for interstellar politics. And throughout it all, one thought lingered. The humans had arrived, acted independently, and demanded attention without ever showing aggression. That realization unsettled everyone. Humans had done what the Empire had failed to do, and they had done it calmly, efficiently, and without fanfare. Meanwhile, on the human warship, the crew continued its work. They had prepared for potential hostility, but none had occurred. They monitored Imperial communications closely, noting every reaction, every strategy, every uncertainty. At the same time, their sensors scanned the surrounding sectors for anomalies, energy fluctuations, and irregular signals. Every action was precise, every movement deliberate. The human crew understood the stakes. This anomaly could threaten entire systems if left unchecked, and they were the first to arrive. Their mission was not to dominate, but to act. And they were prepared to do whatever was necessary to succeed. The communication continued, and slowly, a sense of cautious cooperation began to emerge. The Empire realized that the humans were not acting out of aggression, pride, or dominance. They were acting out of responsibility, foresight, and awareness of danger. And while that did not erase the tension, it created a fragile opportunity, the possibility of shared knowledge and joint action. The Empire had rarely experienced humans in this role, and the realization forced them to reconsider long-held assumptions about human behavior, strategy, and decision-making. In the council chambers, officers discussed the next steps carefully. They debated sending observers, preparing fleets for immediate action, and gathering scientific teams to assess the anomaly. The message from the humans had created a new layer of complexity. Cooperation might prevent disaster, but it also required trust, something the Empire rarely extended to humans. And yet, every officer recognized that ignoring the humans or dismissing their findings could lead to consequences far worse than any imagined war. As the day passed, more data from the human warship reached Imperial systems. The anomaly humans had detected was unlike anything the Empire had encountered. It was subtle, spreading slowly but steadily, affecting multiple star systems in ways that defied conventional understanding. Sensors had detected minor energy distortions, slight changes in planetary orbits, and unusual interference with communications. These signals had gone unnoticed by Imperial monitoring systems, but humans had identified them quickly, accurately, and with certainty. That realization reinforced the message's importance. Humanity was not here to fight. They were here to prevent catastrophe. Despite the cooperative tone, tension remained. Imperial officers were cautious, aware that even well-intentioned humans could act unpredictably. Plans were developed, contingencies prepared, and communication channels kept open. The Empire had learned to respect human capability, but it had also learned to fear human independence. One thing was clear: the humans would act according to their own judgment, and no Imperial orders could dictate their actions. That independence was both unsettling and admirable. For the first time, the Empire confronted a situation it could not fully control. Humans had arrived, identified a danger, and requested cooperation, but they had made it clear that they would not wait for permission. The message was subtle but unmistakable. Humans were capable of action, prepared to make decisions independently, and ready to respond to threats as they saw fit. Every officer in the council understood that the Empire's traditional methods, fleet dominance, centralized command, or intimidation, would not dictate the outcome here. Humans had set the terms quietly, firmly, and without confrontation. The message ended with a clear statement. The human warship was prepared to share information, coordinate observation, and take measures to mitigate the anomaly. It was a call for dialogue, cooperation, and preparedness. And in that simple, measured communication lay a profound truth. Humans were capable of shaping events not through fear or aggression, but through foresight, initiative, and calm determination. The Empire had never faced this combination before, and it left everyone in the Council unsettled, impressed, and deeply aware of the humans' power. By the time the communication concluded, the Empire had reached a consensus. They could not ignore the humans. They could not challenge them lightly, and they must prepare to cooperate. Orders were sent to fleets and stations, not to attack or intimidate, but to observe, support, and analyze. Scientists began planning joint studies of the anomaly, while military planners adjusted strategies to accommodate the humans' independent action. Every officer knew that this was a turning point. The humans had arrived, communicated calmly, and altered the Empire's perception of power, strategy, and responsibility. And across the galaxy, observers, traders, and colonists watched in fascination. The humans were not conquering, not threatening, but acting with purpose and independence. They had arrived first, identified a hidden danger, and communicated without aggression. Their presence was a statement, a warning, and a lesson, even in the vastness of space. The actions of a single human warship could change the balance of attention, respect, and preparedness across an entire empire. As the day ended, the Empire faced a new reality. The humans had not come to fight, but their presence had already changed everything. Commanders knew that the anomaly required attention, that the humans' actions had revealed gaps in Imperial awareness, and that the calm, deliberate presence of humanity had shifted the perception of power. For the first time in decades, the Empire realized that human initiative, foresight, and independence could not be controlled, underestimated, or ignored. The human warship remained at its post, silent, calm, and deliberate. It was a signal that action was possible without aggression, that leadership could come from initiative, and that courage and intelligence could outweigh numbers. And as Imperial officers prepared to act, analyze, and cooperate, one undeniable. The revelation came slowly, but when it did, it shook the entire galactic empire to its core. After hours of careful observation, analysis, and cautious cooperation with the humans, Imperial scientists confirmed what the humans had already suspected. There was a hidden danger spreading across multiple star systems. At first, the evidence was subtle slight energy fluctuations, minor changes in planetary rotations, unusual anomalies in communication signals, but as the sensors and data were combined, the reality became undeniable. This was no ordinary event. It was a threat unlike anything the Empire had faced before, and humans had arrived first. The High Council convened urgently, but the atmosphere was tense and uneasy. Officers, scientists, and strategists discussed the anomaly in detail, trying to understand what it could mean. Some initially thought it might be a natural phenomenon, a cosmic event that would resolve itself over time. Others feared it could be an attack, some kind of weapon deployed in secret by a rival faction. Every hypothesis, however, was insufficient. The data was precise and alarming. The anomaly was spreading, slowly but steadily, affecting star systems in ways that defied conventional understanding. Entire colonies were at risk, entire fleets could be compromised, and the implications were terrifying. Meanwhile, the human warship had been conducting its own investigation. Its crew worked tirelessly, scanning affected sectors, calculating potential outcomes, and preparing for scenarios that no one in the Empire had even imagined. The humans moved with calm efficiency, their focus absolute. They did not speak of fear, nor did they express doubt. Their confidence was rooted in preparation, intelligence, and adaptability. They understood the risk and were ready to act decisively. For the humans, this was not a question of showing force. It was a matter of responsibility, of taking action before the danger escalated beyond control. Reports from Imperial reconnaissance teams confirmed the anomaly's spread. Sensor arrays detected energy distortions that interfered with propulsion systems and communications. Planetary atmospheres in affected systems were subtly destabilized, threatening weather patterns, resource production, and population stability. The anomalies were not violent yet, but the implications were clear. If left unchecked, entire star systems could face catastrophic consequences. The humans had recognized this immediately and had arrived with a mission to contain, or at least understand it before it could reach a critical point. Imperial officers were both awed and terrified. The humans had acted before the Empire, not because they sought to dominate, but because they were capable of recognizing and responding to a threat the Empire had overlooked. For centuries, the Galactic Empire had relied on its fleets, technology, and intelligence networks to anticipate and respond to dangers. And yet, a single human warship, operating independently, had reached the same conclusion faster and more efficiently than the combined efforts of entire Imperial divisions. The officers could not ignore the message this sent. Human initiative, intelligence, and foresight were forces to be reckoned with. The High Council realized that immediate cooperation was essential. A joint task force was assembled, combining Imperial resources with the human warship's capabilities. Scientists, strategists, and communication officers worked side by side to analyze the anomaly, track its movement, and determine its potential impact. For the first time, humans and Imperial officers collaborated on equal footing, each contributing knowledge, perspective, and experience. The humans' calm, methodical approach set the tone, and gradually, the Imperial teams began to adjust, respecting the humans' insights while contributing their own expertise. As the investigation continued, the full scale of the anomaly became apparent. Entire sectors of space were affected in ways that were difficult to predict. Minor disruptions in one system triggered changes in another, creating a cascading effect that threatened to destabilize regions that the Empire had considered secure. Communications across multiple systems were intermittently blocked, fleet maneuvers became unreliable, and the behavior of certain planets and moons defied existing calculations. The human sensors detected these subtle patterns. While the Empire struggled to understand the scope without guidance, the humans' role was critical. They provided insight, strategies, and precise analysis that the Empire could not match alone. Their presence was not just a symbol of capability, it was a practical necessity. The Empire had the resources, the numbers, and the reach, but humans had recognized the danger and had already begun taking action. This was a turning point. The realization settled across the council chambers and command centers. Without human cooperation, the anomaly could spiral out of control, potentially destroying lives, resources, and entire civilizations. Yet even with the anomaly understood, the situation remained tense. Humans and Imperial officers had to navigate more than scientific analysis. They had to overcome mutual distrust, differences in procedure, and the inherent tension of working together under extraordinary pressure. Humans acted decisively, prioritizing action over ceremony, while Imperial officers were cautious, methodical, and concerned with protocol. Conflicts arose, but over time, the urgency of the situation forced compromise. The humans' calm focus and the Empire's resources combined in a way that neither side could achieve alone. The human warship moved strategically, using its advanced sensors and technology to stabilize affected areas. Minor interventions, such as adjusting energy flows, stabilizing communication disruptions, and monitoring gravitational distortions, prevented further escalation. Every action was precise, minimal, and effective. The humans understood the limits of their mission. They could not resolve everything at once, but they acted with maximum efficiency to contain the situation and provide critical information to the Empire. Imperial. Officers watched in awe as the humans executed maneuvers that seemed impossible. Small adjustments in the warship's position altered energy fields, stabilized unstable sectors, and provided accurate predictive data to Imperial scientists. Each action was deliberate, careful, and extraordinarily effective. The Empire had never witnessed such precise coordination by a single vessel. The human warship was not just responding to the anomaly, it was shaping the outcome, providing solutions before the Empire could even comprehend the full scope of the threat. Across the galaxy, word spread slowly about the anomaly and the humans' actions. Colonies, traders, and independent observers noted the stabilizing influence of the human warship. Some were skeptical, others alarmed, but many realized that humanity had acted decisively in a situation the Empire had barely recognized. The humans' presence was a reminder that responsibility could come in forms beyond military power. One ship, guided by intelligence, foresight, and courage, had changed the trajectory of potential disaster for countless systems. Back in the High Council, discussions shifted. The focus was no longer speculation about human motives. The anomaly demanded immediate attention, and cooperation became the priority. Humans and Imperial officers coordinated actions across multiple star systems, sharing data, deploying observation teams, and analyzing patterns together. Slowly, the Council realized the humans' role was essential. Without their insight, containment would have been impossible, and the potential damage far greater. The anomaly had revealed a new reality, one where human foresight and independence could surpass traditional Imperial control. The human crew remained focused, patient, and precise. They did not seek recognition, reward, or praise. Their goal was the safety and stability of multiple star systems, and every action was directed toward that purpose. They communicated clearly, shared observations, and guided Imperial teams in ways that were both efficient and respectful. For the humans, this was a mission of responsibility, not conquest. And yet, their presence and competence left a lasting impression on the Empire, challenging assumptions and creating a new level of respect. As the anomaly was gradually contained, the Empire began to reflect on what had occurred. The humans had arrived first, identified the threat, and acted decisively to mitigate it. Imperial fleets had been unable to detect or respond without guidance. The High Council, generals, and scientists acknowledged that the humans' presence had not only prevented disaster, but had also taught the Empire a lesson in initiative, responsibility, and foresight. For the first time, human capability was recognized not as unpredictable or reckless, but as essential and effective. By the end of this phase, the anomaly was no longer an immediate threat, though careful monitoring continued. The humans' analysis had stabilized affected systems, provided actionable data, and prevented further escalation. The Empire, humbled and impressed, realized that cooperation with humans was not merely a strategic choice, it was a necessity. The human warship, calm and precise, had reshaped the way the Empire understood power, responsibility, and action. And as the human crew continued their work, the Imperial officers knew one undeniable truth: humanity's arrival had changed everything. It was not the threat of war that had created panic, but the demonstration of competence, initiative, and calm decisiveness. The anomaly had revealed the true capability of humans, a capability the Empire could no longer ignore, underestimate, or challenge. Their presence was a warning, a lesson, and a sea. The galaxy was quiet in the aftermath of the anomaly, but the silence was not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that carries a weight, a reminder of how close systems had come to disaster. Across the Imperial sectors, fleets and colonies remained on high alert, their sensors still active, and their officers cautious. Every command center, every research station, and every fleet knew the truth: humans had arrived. acted decisively, and prevented catastrophe. And the Empire's traditional dominance had been challenged. Inside Imperial High Command, discussions were no longer about fear or panic. They were about respect, strategy, and the recognition of human capability. The High Council, who had once doubted, debated, and feared humanity's unpredictability, now had to accept a simple reality. The humans had acted efficiently, independently, and with a level of foresight that no Imperial fleet could match. It was humbling, and it created a mixture of awe, respect, and unease. For decades, the Empire had relied on its numbers, technology, and control. Humans had shown that initiative, intelligence, and calm decisiveness could outweigh all of that. The human warship continued to monitor the sectors affected by the anomaly, sharing critical data, assisting in stabilizing systems, and guiding Imperial teams in preventive measures. For the humans, this was not an opportunity for glory. There were no celebratory announcements, no demonstrations of power, no unnecessary bravado. Their actions were simple, deliberate, and focused entirely on maintaining stability and preventing future threats. This quiet, professional approach impressed the Empire more than any display of firepower ever could. Communication channels remained open between the humans and the Empire. Scientists, officers, and strategists exchanged information regularly, creating a collaboration that had been almost unimaginable just days before. Humans provided insight into the anomaly, shared methods for stabilizing affected systems, and suggested approaches that Imperial teams had never considered. At the same time, the Empire contributed resources, fleets, and expertise, slowly forming a cooperative network that combined the strengths of both civilizations. What had begun as suspicion and fear had evolved into cautious partnership. Despite the cooperation, tension remained. Imperial officers were accustomed to control, hierarchy, and command, and humans operated independently, following their own reasoning and intuition. Every action taken by the humans was deliberate, precise, and often unconventional. It challenged the Empire's assumptions about leadership, strategy, and problem-solving. Yet it also demonstrated something the Empire had long underestimated. Humans could act decisively, responsibly, and successfully without following rigid protocols or relying on large forces. Their independence was both unsettling and inspiring across the affected sectors. The humans' presence had a stabilizing effect. Planetary systems were monitored, energy anomalies adjusted, and communications restored. Minor disturbances were corrected before they escalated, and fleets that had been on high alert could relax slightly, knowing that humans had already addressed the critical elements of the threat. Colonists, traders, and observers across multiple systems began to realize the significance of humanity's actions. One ship, guided by intelligence and purpose, had shifted the course of events for countless systems. The Empire had learned a powerful lesson. The galaxy was not shaped solely by numbers, technology, or intimidation. It was shaped by initiative, foresight, and the ability to act decisively when the stakes were high. Humans had demonstrated all of these qualities in abundance. Officers who had once questioned human capability now acknowledged it openly. Scientists and strategists who had doubted humans' understanding of cosmic anomalies now respected their methods and insights. And diplomats who had feared unpredictability now recognized that human independence could be a stabilizing factor in times of crisis. The anomaly itself, though no longer an immediate threat, left lasting consequences. Imperial systems began to upgrade monitoring protocols. Fleets were reassigned to include human guidance, and research teams were formed to study the anomaly in detail. The Empire had no choice but to acknowledge that humans had set a new standard for initiative, precision, and responsibility. Their actions had prevented disaster, and they had done so without demanding recognition, power, or reward. This quiet competence left a lasting impression. one that would influence imperial planning for decades to come. Meanwhile, the human crew continued their work, calmly observing, analyzing, and guiding actions as needed. There was no celebration, no sense of triumph, no attempt to assert dominance. Their purpose remained clear: to ensure stability, prevent further disruption, and assist in understanding the anomaly. Every move was thoughtful, measured, and aimed at long-term safety. In the process, humans demonstrated an important principle. True power lies not in aggression, but in responsibility, foresight, and the ability to act effectively when it matters most. Within the imperial ranks, officers began to adopt this perspective. Fleets were reorganized to include more flexible strategies, allowing for independent decision-making when necessary. Scientists and strategists began to consult human methods, integrating them with imperial technology to improve accuracy and efficiency. The Empire recognized that human independence could be an asset, not a threat. And this shift in mindset marked a significant change in their approach to interstellar challenges. As weeks passed, the cooperation between humans and the Empire became a model of efficiency and mutual respect. Observation teams monitored previously affected sectors, analyzing residual effects of the anomaly and implementing preventive measures. The human warship remained a constant presence, guiding fleets, providing insight, and ensuring that no immediate threats re-emerged. Its crew operated with calm precision, demonstrating that true leadership was about action, awareness, and responsibility rather than force or intimidation. The galaxy itself began to take notice. Independent colonies, traders, and even distant observers recognized the significance of humanity's actions. One lone warship had arrived first, identified a hidden danger, and acted decisively to prevent disaster. Humans had demonstrated intelligence, foresight, and the ability to influence outcomes on a galactic scale without aggression. Across the stars, their reputation grew, not as conquerors, but as problem solvers, capable and dependable in times of crisis. Even within the Empire, public acknowledgement began to emerge, though subtly. Officials praised human insight and initiative, highlighting their effectiveness in preventing widespread disaster. Military officers, scientists, and strategists reported improvements in imperial operations based on human collaboration. Slowly, the Empire began to integrate humans into planning processes, observation networks, and emergency response strategies. The galaxy had learned a new truth. Cooperation with humans was not optional, it was essential. The human warship, however, remained unassuming. There was no display of power, no boastful announcement, no desire for recognition. Its crew continued their mission quietly, focused on stability, observation, and long-term safety. Their calm, deliberate presence reinforced a lesson that had been learned across multiple systems. True influence is measured by results, not force. One ship, guided by intelligence, responsibility, and courage, had changed the course of the galaxy without firing a single shot. By the end of this period, the Empire had accepted a new reality. Humans were no longer seen as unpredictable outsiders, but as capable allies, independent thinkers, and vital participants in managing complex galactic phenomena. The anomaly had revealed weaknesses in imperial monitoring and preparedness, but it had also demonstrated the power of human initiative and foresight. Officers, scientists, and strategists acknowledged that future crises would require collaboration, adaptability, and respect for human judgment. Across multiple star systems, humans had left a lasting impression. Colonies and observers had witnessed the effectiveness of a single warship acting with intelligence and purpose. The Empire had been challenged, humbled, and ultimately guided toward a new understanding of strategy, responsibility, and collaboration. For the first time, the galaxy saw humans not as a curiosity, threat, or anomaly, but as an essential force, capable of shaping events through foresight, decisiveness, and calm competence. And as the human warship prepared to continue its patrols, its crew remained vigilant, focused, and ready. There would be other anomalies, other challenges, other threats that the Empire might overlook. But the humans had shown the galaxy one undeniable truth: preparedness, initiative, and responsibility could achieve what fleets and numbers alone could not. Their actions had prevented disaster, reshaped imperial perception, and established a new standard for how challenges across the stars would be met. The galaxy would never forget the lesson. Humans had arrived, acted decisively, and reminded everyone that true power was not in numbers or weapons, but in awareness, intelligence, and the courage to act when it mattered most. And as Imperial officers returned to their duties, fleets resumed patrols, and colonies resumed normal operations, one thought resonated across every command center, every observation post, and every fleet: humanity had arrived, and the galaxy had been changed forever.